Yesterday, the House of Representatives passed a clean debt ceiling bill. Now, it was a vote of 221 to 201 in favor, mostly made up of course, Democrats. The nation is one step closer to actually raising the debt ceiling without any sort of weird deal or any kind of problems. Now, 28 Republicans joined the Democrats in favor of the measure, so, I mean, it got a little bit of bipartisan support, but just enough for it to squeak through the House and end up in the Senate for debate where it's sitting right now. Now, of course, John Boehner, he pretty much didn't want to touch it, and he's just like, let's just let the Democrats deal with it. Just let's get it passed. Get it through the House. Notice, of course, they didn't add anything to this. Now, there's a closed-door meeting, actually, where they actually tried to repeal the cuts to military pensions. Now, that's incredibly popular. Understandable. We made cuts during the sequester to military pensions, and they were going to attempt to add this onto the clean debt ceiling bill, but they decided that it would be best to split it since a lot of the Republicans would still vote against it anyway, and they actually wouldn't get enough people to sign on to raise the debt ceiling with those added on, so they went and passed it in a separate bill. And now, later on, when asked about that by reporters, he said that, look, we don't even have 218 votes. When you don't have 218 votes, you have nothing. Pretty much. Now, I have to actually remind everybody that the debt ceiling actually does not mean that we've authorized any new spending. It actually just allows us to borrow money to cover what's actually been spent. Now, I want to show you this clip of John Boehner talking about the decision to raise the debt ceiling. Let's see what he has to say.
He's the one driving up the debt. Then the question they're asking is, well, why should I deal with his debt limit? And so the fact is, we'll let the Democrats put the votes up. We'll put a minimum number of votes up to get it passed.
And that's pretty much what they did. Now, notice that he said that it's the president's debt. It's all the president's debt, right? That's kind of funny because it's actually not the president's debt, at least not all of it. President Obama, if you can remember, inherited a $1.2 trillion deficit and the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. Not exactly the president's fault on that one, to be fair. Yes, President Obama has done some spending, but overall, when you look at it, President Obama has actually done the least spending of many of our last presidents. We have a deficit right now that's about $680 billion. Okay, that's a lot less than $1.2 trillion that he was left with. He's been reducing the deficit, and it's going to be even, it's going to go down even further, according to CBO projections. Bush and the Republicans, however, they drove it through the roof during the Bush years with, things like unfunded tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts for the rich, especially Medicare Part D, and of course, guess what? Yeah, 2 unfunded wars. That's why we have a huge deficit, and that's part of why we have an enormous national debt. If you remember, Clinton actually left us with a surplus. And what the Republicans do? They pissed it away on tax cuts for the rich, on all those things that I mentioned above. So don't talk about how fiscally responsible you guys are, Republicans, and how this is the president's debt. No, it's not the president's debt. It's your debt from the mess that you made. A large percentage of that is Republicans. You want to talk about how to cut the debt and the deficit? We can be open to that. I've got a few suggestions. Why don't we talk about cutting the Pentagon budget? The overbloated military budget. Oh, but John, you don't want to do that, do you? No, of course not. All right, I got another idea. If you don't want to cut the military, that's okay. Well, why don't we cut oil subsidies to the tune of $4 billion a year? Oh, never mind. You guys love oil subsidies. Oh, you and your donors, especially. Okay, so why don't we institute something like a financial transactions tax? About 0.001 cents for financial transaction on automated trades on the stock market. Why don't we do that? Oh, right. Once again, you and your party are too much in the hands of Wall Street and the big banks to do that. Not to mention, sadly, a lot of Democrats as well. But, oh, I know. Since you're so worried about deficits, right, then why don't we actually make it so that millionaires and billionaires actually pay what they owe in taxes? And we don't have to raise their taxes. We don't have to raise them. We just have to get them to pay what they actually owe in taxes. 35%. Instead of letting them get massive deductions that allow some of course, the most profitable multinational corporations pay less than a normal middle-class family and actually use that to reduce the deficit and pay on our debt. Look, we could have had the national debt at a much, much lower level had we never done the Bush tax cuts for the incredibly wealthy. I'm just throwing that out there. But that's what Republicans do, man. See, these people, they're not actual fiscal conservatives. No. They spend like fucking drunken sailors when they're in office. And then as soon as a Democrat comes into office, suddenly now they're worried about the debt and deficit. Now they cry about it. They whine about, oh my God, you're spending too much. The debt, the deficit, it's so high. You need to cut programs. You need to cut government. You need to reduce the size of government and reduce our spending. Notice how that only happens when a Democrat gets elected. And then you try to cut taxes for yourself as well. And your friends, even more than you already have. While cutting public investment, funding, and of course all the regulation down to pretty much nothing. And trying to get rid of welfare that actually helps regular people in favor of corporate welfare. Look, we've got to stop with that myth that the Democrats are the big spenders here. All right? Don't get me wrong. Both parties love big government. They love it, and they love spending our money. But at least with the Democrats, you know that some of that money is actually going to find its way into the hands of the people who need it most, instead of the multinational corporations that don't. This whole thing about the president's debt, the president's deficit, Obama's the biggest spender, it is pure Republican nonsense. Pure nonsense. Hey, if you enjoyed this clip, make sure to like and leave a comment below, or even share. Sharing is caring. If you want to see more TYT Nation videos, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TYT Nation. Thank you for watching.